With new weapons around Bo Nix and a reloaded defense, will 2025 be the year that the Broncos can make another legitimate run at the AFC West? And we now know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder won the NBA MVP award for this season in a landslide defeat over Nikola Jokic. So how will the Joker's historic season be remembered from here forward? All things to come on today's rundown, and we will begin in the NBA, where, yes, it was announced shortly after our show yesterday that the presumptive favorite in Oklahoma City's SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, was indeed the winner of the 2024-2025 MVP award, with Nikola Jokic finishing in second. But it was the disparity between the first place and second place finishes that took a lot of people, myself included, by surprise. As you see on your screen there, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander received 71 out of a possible 100 first-place votes and 29 second-place votes, which means conversely, because no one else received first or second-place votes besides these two, that Nikola Jokic finished with just 29 first-place votes. And that's, frankly, it's stunning to me. That's an easy word to use, but I'm going to be honest. I think that this voting result is a little bit disrespectful to Nikola Jokic. You're talking about just the fourth season ever, the first non-point guard ever to average a triple-double for a season. He was top 3 in 4 of the most major statistical categories that the NBA holds dear in points, rebounds, assists, and steals on a Western Conference contending team, a top 4 seed, without another teammate who is even qualified as an all-star, has ever, as a Denver Nugget, qualified as an all-star. And he does all of that, and it's not even worth a close race for MVP. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's season leading the NBA in scoring, averaging over 30 points a game on the number 1 team in the West, which did win 68 games. That performance was so great and so amazing that it overshadows Nikola Jokic's historic season, where we're seeing things like we have in his previous 3 MVP seasons that we genuinely have never seen before in the game of basketball, by a 7-3 vote out of 10. That's crazy to me. That is, in my opinion, disrespectful and dismissive to the historic nature with he performed this season. And it's not to say, and I think this is where we get in trouble with the discourse around MVP. This is kind of how it fell a little bit when Joel Embiid won the MVP, another season in which I think Nikola Jokic was deserving of winning that award, instead finishing second. It's not to say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't have a great season. The Thunder are a great team, and SGA is the face of that team. But 71-29? Give me a break. And the problem is, we're now faced with one of two paths. One, this result, because of the overwhelming nature of it, 10 years down the road, we're either going to look back on this year and say, you know what, looking back on it, Jokic should have won that MVP, just like they probably will with the Embiid situation, in which case, if we're talking about what was deserved, Nikola Jokic would be winning his 5th consecutive MVP, something that is just unprecedented in NBA history. And there's this nature of it's so-and-so's turn, it's this, it's that, it's vote fatigue. BS. If you're fatigued by the vote, let somebody else cast the ballot, as far as I'm concerned, because that's ridiculous. And people say, well, if by your metrics, LeBron should have won MVP for 6 or 7 consecutive years, or Michael Jordan for the entire early to mid 90s should have been voted MVP. Yeah, I actually agree with that. And I don't believe in retroactively punishing someone currently because of errors that were made in the past that had nothing to do with these people. So I'm not going to get, too up in arms and huffy and puffy about Nikola not winning an MVP like we were before he had won his first one, because it was so blatantly overdue prior to that, COVID 2021 season, that he was deserved and recognized for what he's able to do on the basketball court. Because now it's more about MVPs are not as important as they're never as important as championships and those kind of trophies and rings. So that is ultimately the focal point, and that was what made it so sweet when Nikola Jokic lost the MVP in the regular season to Joel Embiid, but then they won their first Lombardi trophy in franchise history, and he is awarded finals MVP. You know, that felt like the great dichotomy. We don't get that this season, but it doesn't mean that I or we as Nuggets supporters and fans and observers don't have the right to be greedy and say that when you have a player of the caliber and unique, rare nature of Nikola Jokic, I want him to win every possible thing at every possible turn that I think he is deserving of, whether it's regular season, postseason, or what have you. Because Nikola Jokic, in my opinion, should and I think will go down as one of the, at the lowest, 10 to 12 greatest players to ever pick up a basketball in the National Basketball Association. And MVP snubs and little things like this, or a 20-point blown lead in Game 7 last year, losing to the Thunder in 7 games this year, just missed moments and opportunities like that, they snowball and go a long way into deterring people's minds from a legacy perspective of being worthy of that designation. And I certainly don't want that for the Joker. Speaking of legacy, the Kansas City Chiefs have ruled the AFC West and frankly the NFL for the better part of the last decade or so, really in the last half decade plus that Patrick Mahomes has taken over as the full-time starter. But as we've seen in the last couple of years, while they've still been dominant, let's not forget the Kansas City Chiefs finished with a 15-2 record last season, winning the AFC West in a landslide. But it's looked a little bit different the last couple of years than it did in the first 2 or 3 when Patrick Mahomes was throwing for 5,000 plus yards and 50 touchdowns and threatening Peyton Manning's lofty season records. And it's starting to raise the question when you have an aging Travis Kelce and pieces rotating in and out and having to kind of recapture that magic of how long can Kansas City continue to hold this up? They obviously, this past season, were going for an unprecedented 3-peat of Super Bowl championships, something that had not been done in the NFL ever, and they came well short as they were thumped emphatically by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that's kind of opened the door for this conversation of you've got a revitalized Denver Broncos squad that broke their streak of losing seasons that had dated back to the 2016 season, the last time they were above 500 prior to this most recent year. And they made the postseason for the first time since the year that they hoisted the Lombardi trophy with this one's for Pat. And you've also got, you know, a new regime in LA with Jim Harbaugh, who is, you know, hoping, I would assume, to be the quarterback that can finally take the raw, the intangible, the eye test things that come with Justin Herbert and translate them into not just regular season success, but postseason success. They got one of those two things last year, and then they blew it in the playoffs against the Houston Texans. But they're revamping and reloading, and you can tell that there's a building block and a foundation there because, like the Broncos, they feel pretty confident now that they've satisfied the quarterback position, and it's just about bolstering the roster around him. And then in Las Vegas, as dreadful as they were at points last season, they've wiped a new slate with Pete Carroll coming in as head coach, Tom Brady kind of having a vocal say in things from the ownership perspective and the front office perspective. Pete Carroll bringing in Geno Smith to give them by far their best quarterback since Derek Carr walked out the door under center to work from, someone who Pete Carroll is very familiar with and knows how to work with and likes and enjoys. And they have, you know, the darling of the running back position in the NFL draft in Ashton Genty, plus last year's sexy pick in Brock Bowers. So you have this reinvigorated AFC West. and a Chiefs team that, while maintaining their dominance as they've won 9 straight division titles, it seems like there have been some cracks in that armor, and it's as disingenuous as it might feel to say it was a little bit of a fluky or a questionable 15-2 start. It wasn't as dominant maybe as the number disparity in the win-loss column might suggest, because they were a toe away from losing to the Baltimore Ravens from Isaiah Likely to losing the first game of the season. If Alex Forsythe dies just a little bit slower, the Denver Broncos are the team that hand the Kansas City Chiefs their first loss of the season after having a 35-yard chip shot field goal blocked at the buzzer, spoiling a beautiful 2-minute drive by Bo Nix and one of the better performances from Audric Estime that we saw all season in his rookie campaign. So there's a little bit of smoke around the Kansas City Chiefs maybe being as vulnerable as they've ever been while facing one of the tougher paths they've ever been. And that's where we get to Henry McKenna of Fox Sports, who projected the AFC's hierarchy going into the 2025 season. And here's how he has it shaking out. The Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills win their divisions in the North and East, claiming the top 2 seeds. And at number 3, we see your Denver Broncos. So a presumptive, not a sophomore slump from Bo Nix with Sean Payton for a second consecutive year. The Colts win their division. And then in your wild card, you have the Chargers at 5, the Chiefs at 6, and the Cincinnati Bengals, who came so close and were battling with the Broncos for the final wild card spot, getting that point to the number 7 seed. So if you're looking at that standing, the number 3 seed in the AFC plays the number 6 seed. So in a poetic twist of fate in Henry McKenna from Fox Sports' imaginary world of how the 2025 season is going to unfold in the AFC, the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They dethroned the Chiefs as division titles, preventing a decade straight of dominance in the AFC West. And then they have to turn around and play them in the wild card round. And unlike last year, where the Denver Broncos used a Week 17 win over Kansas City, where they were playing their B squad to beat Kansas City and prevent Cincinnati from any kind of tiebreaker scenario to make it into the postseason. They get the final wild card slot, have to play the number 1 seed Buffalo Bills and get trounced by the end of that game. Unlike the 2023-2024 season, or 2024-2025. In this upcoming season, the Denver Broncos win their wild card matchup against the Chiefs by a measly score of 13-10. So perhaps the Alex Forsythe didn't die slow enough karma is corrected, and the Broncos are on the right side of a game-winning field goal there. Here's what Henry McKenna had to say about his prediction, specifically regarding the Denver Broncos. He says, quote, "The Chiefs just put their heart and soul into the three-peat and failed brutally on the biggest stage. And while I think there's a big brother complex where Andy Reid lords over both Sean McDermott and John Harbaugh, I don't think that's true of Sean Payton, who will bump the fatigued Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce out of the offseason." Listen, if you're telling me that the Denver Broncos take their previous season's campaign, where they saw an end to 2 of the most painful streaks in the history of a very proud franchise here in Denver, and they earn a winning record and break their streak of losing seasons that has lasted since 2016. They make the postseason for the first time since 2015, 2016, when they won the Super Bowl. And they follow that up with not just getting back to where they were before, but eclipsing it by not being a wild card team and winning the division, securing a top 3 seed, and then beating the dethroned dynasty that would be the Chiefs in this scenario in the wild card to advance to the divisional round. That would be an epic validation and prove it moment for the Denver Broncos to show their fan base, the rest of the AFC, and the NFL world that last season for them was not a fluke, that it wasn't simply that they played some crappy teams in the NFC South and they got a win against the Kansas City Chiefs when Carson Wentz was throwing the football. And, they had a losing record against teams above 500, all of which are true. This prediction, if Henry McKenna is on the side of the truth in this hypothetical scenario, that will be a massive validator for the Denver Broncos. And it's not just Henry McKenna who is maybe weaving down this path a little bit. Our guy, NFL insider to the stars and friend of the show, James Palmer, was on with Kay Adams on the Up and Adams podcast. And she asked James about the Kansas City Chiefs and potentially this being a year where we may see them dethroned, at least in their division in the AFC West. And James told Kay, quote, "I think this is the toughest stretch of Mahomes' career, specifically in the division. We've already seen him adjust, and I think we will see him adjust again because he knows the division is much different than the first part of his career." So again, that is someone in James Palmer who has spent an immense amount of time around the Kansas City Chiefs, around the Denver Broncos, and around teams in the NFL in general, is telling you with knowledge and certainty that the Kansas City Chiefs are more aware of their own mortality than they've been in the past. And I think that Mahomes and Andy Reid and company have done a good job thus far of pivoting to say, hey, we no longer have Tyreek Hill, so we have to adjust to play offense this way. Hey, we're too one-dimensional in the pass game, so we need to bring in the likes of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco to help bolster our run game. Hey, our offense, in terms of the explosivity and the high-flying, prolific nature from a points-per-game perspective, isn't there. We need to lean on a great defense, and they've done so. But how many times can you bob and weave, stick and move, pivot and twist before somebody in a league where the margin between the basement and the attic is pretty thin? How many times can you wiggle before somebody gets you? And there is at least presenting a chance in this upcoming 2025 season that could be the case. And the Broncos, if they are able to capitalize on their own momentum, are in a prime position to throw their hat in that ring alongside the Chargers and what I expect to be a much improved Raiders squad just within the AFC West. So we will see how it shakes out. We are already underway of the early portions of off-season programming for the Broncos, from OTAs and mandatory minicamp that have begun in the last couple of weeks and will continue into June just before you know it, training camp in late July is going to be here, in the preseason, which their home game against the Arizona Cardinals has already been announced, date, time, and all. And we're going to find out. The Broncos are going to prove, I think, in this season, whether or not they are closer to returning to the winning legacy and restoring the proud tradition that the Broncos under Pat Bowlen and John Elway and Peyton Manning and the like had built and maintained. They are going to be able to prove whether or not they are truly on their way back to that, or that unexpected whirlwind fun season with Bo Nix as the sixth rookie quarterback taken off the board, and Sean Payton, who's trying to revitalize the last chapter of his career, was more of a fluke than a trend. And I will be here for all of it. We are just, it looks like, 25 or so minutes away from hearing from Nuggets team president and CEO Josh Kroenke about the potential future of that franchise and whether or not David Adelman will have the interim tag removed, whether or not they are going to go into a coaching cycle in search for their next leader of the bench, and the general manager position, which arguably may be more important than the head coach in NBA parlance, and see where they go with that, because their decisions there will, in my opinion, have a lot to say about how this team feels about their future in the prime years of Nikola Jokic and whether or not we could be headed for more bumpy skies than we currently saw this past season. We'll be here to cover all of it. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at DenverSports 1043. Follow us on our social channels, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you have it, at DEN Sports 1043. And we'll catch you tomorrow. I do what I love what I do in second nature.